Henry, speaking to the Boston Globe, had this to say about the state of his team. Quote, "I feel good, but we're still in a building mode here. We're concentrating on building our organization from top to bottom. We took a good step forward last year. We're taking a good step forward this year, but we're still building," end quote. Time now for the deep dive. We got Phil Perry joining us right now. And Phil, I want to bring you in on this first, since we had all that time in the A block to talk about the Red Sox. And you hear what John Henry had to say about the state of the Red Sox right now. What's your reaction to what the team owner had to say?
Well, my reaction is that he's wrong. I just would not use the word building as the defining characteristic of this team right now. They are built, Amina. They are built to win right now. They're right in the middle of the playoffs. They're a couple of moves away from, I think, really contending. They're getting guys back. They're getting players healthy that they need to be healthy in order to compete. This is why teams, quote unquote, build, is to get to the position that they're in right now. So there should be no excuses. And if anything, not only are they not building, but after listening to you guys off the top of the show, they could be due for a teardown in the very near future here. So they should be capitalizing on this moment, not telling us, not trying to sell us, John Henry, that you're building. Red Sox fans are smarter than that, and I think these quotes should really tick them off.
John Henry says that this team is building, and that kind of made Phil Perry mad. But Steve, when you take a look at the Red Sox, what happens if they don't invest at the trade deadline? What does that mean about where the team will be towards the end of this season?
Realistically, I think they will be bringing pieces in at the deadline. I don't think they're going to be sellers. I know Tomase alluded to the fact that they might get rid of JD or one of these big pieces that's up at the end of the year at the deadline. I'd be stunned, honestly, if that happens. And I agree with Perry that they're not that far away from being a legitimate World Series title contender. I don't think you need that many more pieces on top of a team that started the year terribly at 10-19. They've played like 102 win pace since then. Obviously, 4-8 July isn't great. Going into the All-Star break with the Rays and Yankees here, might lose both the series, not great. But they're not that far from being a team that's really trying to contend for a title. I'm not that upset. I can't act like I'm upset about the John Henry line. They have guys that are coming up, so I think that's more the building thing, that you have a team that contends and a team that has prospects. That's what Chaim talks about all the time. So I'm not that upset about that. I'm more upset that if Xander goes and they don't give him a legitimate deal. But yeah, I think they're going to get some pieces at the deadline and not sell.
Tomase, you think that the Red Sox could be sellers at the trade deadline. What would that look like for this organization?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it could be a little of both, Amina. It could be a trade deadline like last year where you go out and you get a couple of relievers who don't really move the needle, but then one of them, Hansel Robles, ended up helping you quite a bit. Maybe you get a Kyle Schwarber type bat for first base. So that is good. You know, that would be enough, because this is kind of like a last stand situation to me when you talk about all the free agents. But then looking ahead, this is why I am not convinced that they might not try to sell off one of their big contracts. If you're Chaim Bloom and everything is about building towards a future and sustainable this and that, and you have all of these big free agents who we're going to list, why wouldn't you take advantage of a market to try to get something for them now, as opposed to, you know, waiting until they leave in free agency and all you get is a draft pick? So whether it's Eovaldi, whether it's JD Martinez, whether it's Christian Vasquez, I think even within the Red Sox clubhouse, there is doubt among the players that all those guys are going to be here when August 2nd comes.
And if they do that, Amina, they're punting on the season, which is not where they should be. The farm system's okay. We've heard it from John and others. It's gotten a lot better in the last couple of years here. It happened quickly. They were in the basement in terms of league-wide prospect systems, but they're not there anymore. So there's really no reason for you to sell off these pieces and try to build that thing up again. Again, they're already there. Not only should fans be unhappy about some of the commentary from John Henry today, how do you feel if you're Alex Cora, or if you're the players in that clubhouse? John mentioned last year's trade deadline. We saw this happen a year ago where they didn't do enough, and it really impacted that team. I'm sure it impacted the manager, but the players were very open about it as well. It impacted them on the field. The same thing will happen this time around if they don't help this group out.
Steve, when you take a look at the Red Sox, what are some of the areas that they do need to fill at the trade deadline if they want to be in playoff contention?
Well, the obvious ones are closer and first base. I know the Franchy and Bobby Dahlbeck experiment has been an interesting one, to say the least. I was a huge Franchy guy with what he was doing at the start of the year. Now that play last night's inexcusable. throwing it to Vasquez. He's not even looking at you. He's trying to get time from the ump. He's dropping balls. Trevor Story had a great play at second base, decides to throw it to first when he realized he couldn't get to second. It was about a week ago, and Franchi drops it right in his glove. So it's hard to see those. You want to bring in maybe a guy like Josh Bell. Closer situation is what I care about more. You're talking about Alex Cora, Phil. I think he would be happy if they can have a legitimate closer and he doesn't have to do this. Okay, maybe Evaldi's closing tonight. Maybe it's Whitlock. Maybe it's Tanner Houck. It would be nice if they could have a legitimate guy at the end of the bullpen that knows he's the closer, that can do it, and that's legitimately ready to perform at the postseason level. They haven't had that in a while. It would be nice to have it.
And Tomase, are the Red Sox right now in last dance mode where they have to go all in at the trade deadline, or do they have a little bit of flexibility?
They should be going all in on this, nucleus. This is the core of this team that Chaim Bloom inherited. We recognize that there are a lot of free agents. Most of them probably aren't going to be here next year. You have a shot right now. This team is not that far away. We're 2 weeks removed from them playing 800 baseball for more than a month. That's the sign of a good team, but it needs just a little bit of help. And, I'm going to go back. Rob Bradford did a podcast with JD Martinez where he talked about how the veteran players there look around and they recognize, do you want to let us go without getting anything for us? If players are talking like that to media members, then that's how they're talking internally. So to go back to what Phil said about, the players aren't going to accept this, I think there is real worry in there that not enough is going to be done. And all I'll say is, what is this team going to look like a year from now if there's no Evaldi, no Martinez, no Bogaerts, maybe even no Devers if he gets the Mookie Betts treatment? What are we looking at, Steve Perrault? What kind of Red Sox team is that going to be?
Then you're really building. That's not where they're at right now.
Yeah. I think the Henry line makes perfect sense if you lose all of these guys and then you're actually a rebuilding team. So, if they treat it like the last dance, maybe that becomes something where the players rally around each other. I got to agree, though, Tomase, the JD lines to Bradfo were interesting, to say the least. I think they were a little eye-opening. I didn't even think that a JD deal would have been possible. The fact he's thinking about it, that gives it a little bit of leverage. And I'm like, wow, that was surprising to see.